If you're like me, sometimes it feels like naming things while programming is hard. It's just one of those things. It's easy to get wrong and it's really hard to get right. We don't set out to do a bad job at it, but we end up there anyway. It's important because it has a direct impact on the readability of our code. In this video, I have 5 guidelines to help you get better at naming things in code. Let's talk about it. The best way, and I think the easiest way, to get better at naming is by using a coding standard. If you don't already have one and aren't working by yourself, you have an uphill battle in front of you. Even if you are working by yourself, you have to be really disciplined to have a chance. I recommend that you take that discipline and just adopt a formal standard. I'm also going to recommend one of my own videos here. This can be a pretty big step, but it's well worth it in my opinion. The link should be above. The language that you use matters. Using a dynamically typed language like Python or JavaScript means you can't trust your gut. Here's a quick example in JavaScript. I'm creating 2 variables, a string and a number, but I can assign the string to the number and the language doesn't care at all. Precise naming is even more important here so that variables and methods aren't misused, like this. It won't make it foolproof. The language will still allow it, but this at least sets the expectation of what the variables are or should be used for. There are also language-specific idioms that are important. Some languages still have widespread acceptance of using Hungarian notation. Some prefer Pascal casing and still others prefer camel casing. Each language is different. Each framework and library are different, so the context you work in definitely matters. In Angular, which is a popular JavaScript TypeScript framework for creating single-page applications, for example, it's generally accepted that your component names end with the word component, your services end with the word service, your pipes end with the word pipe. Without some research, you wouldn't know this. For whatever language, library, or framework you're using, you should put forth the effort to do what is generally accepted by the community, and then make changes from there. If you have a strong dislike to a specific rule, then don't follow it, but at least take that initial step to gain the knowledge necessary to be better informed and make good decisions. If you're working with values that may have more than one possible interpretation, make it clear. Here's another example. In this one, we're working with C#. I'm returning a value from a method that is poorly named called calculate elapsed time. But time in what exactly? Seconds, milliseconds, minutes? Without reading through the method, you wouldn't know, and that's not the way you want to do things. It needs to be obvious what is happening. This can be fixed in 2 different ways. You could change the name of the method to be more accurate, calculate elapsed seconds. You could also change the return type to be more appropriate and make it obvious what's going on. This goes along with the previous point about the solution being specific to a language or framework. In this case, it's framework specific. .NET has a rich type system. I could return a time span instead of an integer and allow you to work on the return value however you want. The return type tells you all you need to know. Consistency matters. It's easily the most important element of good naming practices. You might have heard this before, but if you're consistent, you don't have to be perfect. If you follow just this single rule, it'll help you write more effective code, and I think better code. Repetition also deserves a mention here. Writing code the same way over and over makes it just flow more naturally. After you internalize all the rules in your standard, it's a lot easier to swap things out or make changes. It does take a bit of time to get used to, though. Methods or functions are actions. You don't typically have methods that do nothing. If they aren't performing some type of action, you have to wonder why they're there. Methods do things like calculate or get or handle, put, delete, create, update, print, copy, etc. Name your methods to match what's happening inside so you don't have to inspect every method call you make to see what's going on. And here's your friendly reminder to like and subscribe. We publish a new video every other Sunday for software developers, engineers, and architects. Classes, properties, and variables are things. They are nouns. They should be named as you would name real-life things, such as person, vehicle, table, house, and customer. The name should provide as much detail as possible without being ridiculous. Make it painfully obvious, and leave no doubt what the thing is used for. When naming properties or fields, use names like first name or last name, full name, street address, mailing address, home phone, mobile phone, etc. When you do, they become self-explanatory. Most people who see a property named first name don't need to spend a lot of time figuring out what the author was trying to express. Simplicity matters. Using simple rules leads to simple code. Simple rules are easy to remember and recall. Be precise. Don't call a chicken a duck, that's wrong. Don't call a chicken a bird, that's too general. Call it a chicken. That is precise and correct. Say what you mean and call it by the most appropriate name possible. I'm not advocating for verbosity here. Make the name as short as possible and still give a full explanation of what it is. As codebases age, they tend to grow in size and complexity both. The further you are from the origin, the harder it is to understand what it is or what it does if you aren't being a good namer. Put thought into the names of your methods, variables, classes, and properties. Everything that has a name should be well named. You should be mindful of what context you're in. Naming something in a 3-line method is much different than a 25-line method. In a 3-line method, you can see the name is a concatenation of first name and last name. However, if that 3-line method turns into a monster, it becomes quickly obvious that name wasn't good enough. Full name should have been used. It's best to just use the correct name the first time. I stand by the original premise. Naming things in code is hard. It's always been hard, and it's not going to get easier without putting forth effort. These 5 guidelines will help if you use them and do so consistently. And I want to pitch my coding conventions video again. A good coding standard is very important to get better at naming things. That video was one of the first on my channel, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. Until next time, keep coding.